Hello and welcome to another episode of Sandy Killer Projects. Today we're going to do one of the more fun projects that we've done in a while. We're going to be working on the red Jeep Cherokee, which is my off-road toy. We're going to be doing some upgrades on the cooling system. We took it out off-roading on one of the days. It was about 110 degrees and the temperature spiked very high up. So I'm going to do some stuff that will help cool the system back down while we're driving. We're going to put a Jeep Grand Cherokee Hayden clutch on. We're going to change out the radiator hoses since we're in there. Switching out the radiator, which that's my favorite part because that is a performance aluminum radiator, which we'll be changing out for the stock one. So what we're going to do is start disassembling parts inside of here, which here you can't really see much anything going on because the radiator is actually hidden underneath this bracket. But we'll go through step by step and show exactly what's going to happen. First thing we're going to do is drain the radiator, which is a fairly simple process, and then we'll start disassembling parts off of it to get it going so that you can see all of what's going to happen. Okay, so this is one of the things I can't really show too much of doing it while I'm doing it, but on the passenger side, up underneath the car, there is a valve on the bottom of the radiator. It's that guy right there. It's that little black thing, that little hand turn thing. You just unscrew that and it releases the fluid out of the radiator. To get to that, we need to pull this pop pin off of the inner fender and move this back away so that the fluid doesn't spill all over it. And then you need a drain pan under the car, and then you got to reach up there and spin that guy open, and then it will release the fluid very slowly. When I say very slowly, I mean it won't dump the entire radiator quickly because it's just out of a little petcock valve. To get it to come out faster, you want to pull the radiator cap off on the top. But I'm going to do this part first, and then we'll move on to pulling parts off of it. Okay, this is what I was talking about when I was saying very slowly. See how it's just dripping out of there? As soon as I open the cap off of this guy and release the pressure, it'll start flowing out of there fairly regularly. Now it's actually draining the radiator out. This is actually going to take a little while, and it's kind of a slow process. If you want to get it to go faster, you can pull the radiator hose off. At this point, I'm just going to let it run, and then I'll come back to working on it in a little bit. I got stuff I got to work on the top side. Alright, here we are back on top. The radiator is most of the way drained out. I've still got a catch bucket under there just to make sure if anything drips, it's not running all over the floor. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start disassembling the top of this to be able to get to the parts that we need to get to. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the radiator overflow hose off of here, and I'm going to leave these in place as they are, but I'm going to unscrew the nuts off of all of them. These 4 bolts. There's one bolt here, one bolt here, one bolt here, one bolt here. What hold the fan shroud? This is the fan shroud, and the auxiliary electric fan on. At the same time, there's the power for the auxiliary fan, which runs back to the back of it to run the motor. This has a little red key. You have to squeeze in on it in a certain position to get it to come out, and then it'll slide up and out of there. There's a little bit of a trick to them. I might be able to show it, but I'm not exactly sure if I will be able to, because it's something I'm going to need both hands to get apart. But you pull this little red key out of here, and then this will split apart. So next, radiator hose, fan shroud hardware, and I'm going to disassemble this support bracket that holds the front trim of the car on. Keeps it supported upward so that it's not crushed down. There are other support bolts that keep this plastic nose piece in place, but I'm going to take the support rail off of the back because it's one of the parts that keeps things from getting where I need it. So I'll take care of all that. We'll show you what it looks like after that, and I'll show you the parts. Okay, here we are back at the top of the car. I've got a few of the pieces off now, so the radiator overflow hose that used to run along the top of here, it came out, and I have it curled up sitting on here, still attached to the overflow bottle in the back. I actually left the hardware in the bolts too so that I don't lose it. There was one more screw that was in here that I just set it off to the side. There are 2 bolts that go through the top of your auxiliary fan. So that's this guy sitting right here, and there's 2 bolts that go through the top of the main fan shroud. The auxiliary fan and the main fan shroud had 8mm bolts. That's the socket that you use to get those out. Then I also have the nose piece support bracket that bolts to the top of the upper radiator brace. That came out with the T30 Torx bits that went down through the verticals, and then there was there were 4 10mm bolts that went through here. Okay, so remember I was saying that the plug for the auxiliary fan is a bit tricky. So this little red guy here, you have to finagle it out so that it comes completely out. I just have it back in here so that I don't lose it, and I'm going to have to put it back in later. Then on the other side of the clip, there's a little guy right here that catches it from allowing you to take it out. So on this side, if your clip is still in good shape, you push down on this end and it lifts up the front so that you can slide the clip out. If it doesn't, you're gonna have to get a screwdriver up in underneath there and pull this guy up so that the plug will come out. In my case, it's still in good shape, so I didn't have to fight with that. This is also a manual transmission vehicle, so these would be the hookups for your transmission cooler. This is the lower hose, and this is the connection for the upper. This vehicle is not going to be using any of those because I don't have an automatic transmission, so I don't have an automatic transmission cooler. Also, one of the cool things with this setup, when you are putting in and taking out your fan shroud and your auxiliary fan, they just have little clips on the bottom of them, and they drop down into those little clips down on the bottom. So there are no lower bolts. You don't have to fight with anything to get out of this. These older Jeeps, they're fairly well designed for people to be working on them regularly, so a lot of things are pretty easy to get in and out. So with the fan shroud, I can't take the fan shroud out. It's actually trapped in here. So normally what you would do is you would remove the fan shroud with the radiator itself. But in our case, since I'm replacing the fan clutch, I'm going to disassemble this guy off here, pull the fan clutch and the fan shroud out together, and then I'll be able to reassemble everything back in, and I'll show you the difference between the 2 different fan clutches so that you see how much heavier duty and better off the Jeep Grand Cherokee clutch is going to be compared to the stock Cherokee fan clutch. Okay, so here are the 2 clutches out. This is the stock one. As you can see, it's significantly smaller than the Jeep Grand Cherokee one. I've been told it sits significantly closer to the radiator, and as I can see, it leaves me about a 1/4 of an inch between the radiator, the stock radiator, and this. So I'm not even 100% sure this is going to fit with the new performance radiator. We may end up having to put the stock one back in, but just so that you're aware, the bolts that hold the clutch in were 13mm wrenches, and the ones that hold the fan onto the back of the clutch are 13 also. And then the fan and the shroud came out together. It was the only way to get it out of the space. The next thing I'm going to end up working is removing the upper support bracket. As you can see, there's a part for the stock battery hold down. That's got to come out, and then all the hardware along the top here that holds it in place. We'll pull that off next, and then you'll be able to see the top of the radiator. Well, there it is, top of the radiator. This guy right here is your air conditioning condenser unit. They're attached through some hardware along the top. This is actually the panel that goes across here, which is what we normally look at when we're looking down at the car. There are 6 bolts that hold them in place. There's 2 that go along here and 1 that goes on the back, and then the same thing on the other end. There are 2 on the side and 1 in the back. That holds that in place, but there are also 2 on the top of the radiator right here. They use these little compression nuts on the top of them. So the 6 were 10 millimeters. These are probably supposed to be 10 millimeters also, but because they get compressed and get all out of whack, these came off with my 11 millimeter. You're also going to need to disassemble these guys off of each side, because this is what spaces out your radiator from your upper support. So those are going to have to come off and get put on to the new aftermarket radiator. This guy at this point will just lift out. I'm going to pull this one out and get the aftermarket radiator to where we can see it, and then we'll start reassembling stuff. Okay, so once all that stuff is disassembled, you just lift the radiator right out. It comes off of these upper brackets for the AC condenser, and then all of the AC condenser and the radiator all fit down into these pegs. The upper and lower radiator hose, this is actually the lower radiator hose. I'm going to change out because as you see by this upper radiator hose, I have some pretty heavy swelling around it. So this guy's going to come out. I'm also going to change this one out, which goes down into there. Then here is the old radiator, which looks as though it is actually an aftermarket radiator, but it is not what you'd call a performance radiator. This is a stock radiator with plastic caps on each side. The radiator that's going in it is a Mishimoto all aluminum radiator with heavier duty tanks and wider fins on each side. Much better constructed, much better cooling. So the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to disassemble these plugs out of it, or I'm sorry, disassemble these hoses out of it, and then I'm going to install the new heavier duty fan clutch onto here, and then slide the radiator down in front of it. This is an experiment. I've had lots of people tell me this works. If it doesn't work, when we come back on the video, I will have the fans, the stock fan clutch back in here with the fan shroud and all that. So if the bits don't fit, you'll notice the stock fan clutch. Right now, plan is for Jeep Grand Cherokee fan clutch to go in. Alright, so the upgraded fan clutch doesn't fit. And the reason why I say it doesn't fit is because in the stock hole locations with the slightly oversized radiator, it makes it to where it touches the fins as it is fit down in. So what I've decided to do, which actually isn't that difficult of a modification, is I've decided to move the hole locations for the air conditioner compressor and the radiator. As you can see, this is the stock hole where the bushings used to go, and I've now moved it further up. And you might think that would cause a lot of modifications, a lot of things that need to be moved. It actually doesn't. There's not a whole lot that has to be done to make this fit into here so that it works with the setup. So I've actually pushed this back about an inch, give me similar clearance to what I used to have. So next, between the fan clutch and the radiator. So next I'm going to drop the radiator in so that it's easy to see how all this goes. And I've already got the fan shroud and everything ready to go. We just need to drop her in. Alright, at this point the radiator is installed. I have the lower radiator hose on. I have a plug from my old radiator for the cooler line. It has the stock plugs in it, and I used a cap from my other setup to put on here. Also, my radiator didn't have the brackets that separated the AC condenser and the radiator. Those came with the Mishimoto kit. I installed them so that there's a definite separation between the two, because I don't need being out on the trail and having it bounce into the other one. Also, the one thing I didn't realize that I was gonna have to do with this was by moving it back, the fan shroud at the bottom sticks out down below the height of the metal for that support, so I had to take that piece off. As of right now though, this piece is installed into the brackets that it sits into, and it's ready to go. So the next thing I have to do is modify the hole locations for this. We'll start putting the fans back in it once that's done, but for now we'll move that bracket and put the plate back on so you can see how that goes. Alright, here is the upper bracket reinstalled. As you can see from this hole right here, I made an attempt to move the upper brackets. It didn't want to fit. The reason why it didn't want to fit is because this channel right here is only big enough for the radiator to fit in. So by trying to move it back into a lower hole and put it into this angle that's right here. So it went back into the stock holes, both of them did. And as you can see, there's still plenty of room between the fan and the radiator. I've got, that angle doesn't really show you very well, but I've got a good 3/4 of an inch. So next thing to do would be install the fan, reattach the shroud, and put the support bracket for the front plastics back into place. And then the installation end of this will be done. Next we gotta fill the radiator, and that takes a special procedure also, but I will show you everything installed so it looks like it's back to normal, and then we'll go to that. At this point the installation is done. All the bits and pieces and stuff that had to be screwed back on is done. The radiator, the Mishimoto Radiator, has a piece that you have to screw in here that acts as the overflow hose. If you don't have an overflow bottle, you're not running one, they have a block off screw that goes with it. In my case, because I'm running the overflow bottle, it needs to be in there. So that's installed. As I said before, the plate's installed, but this the support for the plastic's now installed. The fan is, the auxiliary fan is installed, and the connector that we took off at the beginning is back on with the little red tab back in. You just press it back together and stick the red piece back through it. It also has like a little tab on the bottom of it that connects it to the auxiliary radiator, or I'm sorry, the auxiliary fan. And since I still have the stock clips on the hoses, those go through the bolts that hold the auxiliary fan and the main fan shroud. So that is all installed. At this point, everything is put back together. The next thing that we're going to do, and it's actually a very important step, is fill the radiator. I'm going to go over that also because you can actually see the issue with the design in the Cherokee's cooling system more pronounced now because we have a brand new hose on it. See, the radiator's below all these guards, and it goes up over the air conditioner. So when it goes up, you're drawing the radiator fluid up and out to try and get it in and down. The problem is when you don't have the radiator filled properly, the fluid will actually get trapped, and you won't get any in this tube up here. It could cause the car to overheat. It won't allow the water to cycle properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a special kind of funnel to fill this that allows you to fill it while the car is running, and then when the thermostat opens, the fluid will get drawn down into the radiator, and you can keep filling it as you go. And if you have too much in the cup, it's got a little stopper that goes in the top of it. So the next part of the video is going to get loud, but this will be the part where we actually put the fluid into the radiator and run it. So I'm going to stop and get that set up, and then I'll show you. Alright, the point we're at here, I put 1 gallon of antifreeze into there already. I've got another gallon, this is the last of it, of water going through the burping funnel. Kind of hard to see at the moment, but see the little air bubbles coming out? What I'm waiting for is for the thermostat to open. When the thermostat opens, it'll start pulling more fluid into the system. You're essentially unpressurizing the system by doing this, but this is the best way to get the coolant all the way through the system. So I'm going to add a little bit more antifreeze so that it doesn't run out while I'm doing it. The thermostat will open up when it gets to about 195 degrees. Once it does that, a lot more fluid will go through, because of the fact that it's now filling the excess gaps. So we'll watch this for a minute. You can actually see it a little bit better now. The funnel's actually bubbling air up through it. But once that thermostat opens, it'll draw all this stuff down because it's moving water through the entire system. I just started the car a couple of seconds ago, so it's not going to do it right now. But you have to do it until it draws the fluid down in, and keep making sure that this reservoir stays full the whole time. I'm going to keep adding coolant as I do it to make sure I don't want it to run out. I've also got the cap off the radiator overflow bottle just in case it starts to come out the other end of it, then I'll for sure know it's done. If you want to shut the coolant off on a burping funnel, it has a stick that goes down into the center to plug the bottom of the funnel so that you can take it off. So these radiator burping funnels come with a whole assembly of parts so that you can fit them to different radiators. This is for an overflow bottle, this is for a bigger cap, this is for a smaller one than what I have, and then just different fittings to get it up and around where you want it at. So that's how this goes. It's going to run for a few minutes. You watch it, it'll sit there and bubble up. That's it. Alright, next we'll wrap this video up. Alright, at this point we're done. The radiator's been burped. The cap is back on it. Everything looks good. Temperature's in normal range. I don't see any leaks on any of the radiator hoses, which is something that I would be checking for when the thermostat has opened and I'm cycling through everything. Also, other things I need to note. If you have a Mishimoto Radiator, it has some stock fittings on it. Those fittings need to be checked for tightness. If you don't, they will leak because they're only put on basically hand tight. Mishimoto is not the only name in performance radiators for Cherokees. There are a few others out there. I chose this one because it seemed like the best. I saw some complaints about some of the others. I am in no way, shape, or form sponsored by this particular radiator company, or any radiator company for that matter. We just make videos to do them for fun and try to help people out and show them how to do things that they've never done before, or do cool upgrades like on this particular one. So with all that being said, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, especially subscribe. If you have any questions, we're always available. Drop us a comment and we will answer as best we can. I didn't mention it to begin with because I've done a few videos on this car, but this is a 1997 Jeep Cherokee Sport 4x4 with a 4.0 six-cylinder. That's the vehicle that we did the upgrade on. Yeah, thanks. Hope you enjoyed.